Hello, this is Blake Temez with the Blake Temez podcast, and for today's episode, I'll be going deeper into the idea of God images that was introduced in the last episode on fear. Now, God images are a concept that I've learned about primarily through the work of Dr. Peter Malinowski, an IFS therapist who is also a Catholic, and the idea has to do with this distinction between a God concept and a God image. Now, a God concept is the one that most of us who have spent any amount of time being taught about God, reading about God, who have spent time in church, and so have been given an impression of who God is according to creedal statements and these different articles of belief. And again, this God concept is the one that we have access to intellectually, right? If we were asked to describe who God is, what we know about him, what we know to be true about his relationship with us and with the world in general, we'd most likely be describing something of our God concept. At least that's the case for most believing Christians. The difference with a God image is that it's not based so much in the conceptual as it is based in the experiential. So just by way of example, to get right to it, Dr. Peter had identified a set of God images that are common in people, and they are images like a drill sergeant God, or a manager God, or a marshmallow God who is very nice but actually unable to do anything, is too weak to protect you or to respond to you, and the heartbreaker God who lifts up your expectations and promises you great things but then ultimately dashes your hopes, and so on and so forth, right? These different ways of relating to God based off of experiences that we've had with key figures in our lives, and how that relates to how we've sensed that God is communicating or treating us. Now, this idea of God images relates to what was previously discussed about fear. Because when we're in situations of fear, oftentimes a resource that we'd want to be able to draw from is a spiritual resource, right? Besides the material resources that we have to help us address whatever the problem is, we would want some type of interior resource, an interior source of strength that would help us persevere towards our goal and experience a sense of security, stability in the midst of the chaos. Now, if one has God images that do not provide or convey any sense of assistance or support from God, then one's interior resources in that area are going to be depleted, right? They're going to be diminished in some way that will ultimately affect how one acts, how one thinks when they're confronted with fear. We think again of the difference between the right brain, the left brain, the master, the emissary, the spirit of finesse or the spirit of geometry, as has been described as Pascal. These dichotomies that I've described in previous episodes. And what happens when we're confronted by fear is oftentimes we're locked into a left brain experience where our attention is very narrow. We're only dealing with data and how we can manipulate objects in our environment. And we're focused on getting or having a solution, as opposed to being able to enter into the right brain or the master mode, where our attention is broader, We have a clearer sense of our emotional responses to things and how to regulate them. And we're perceiving reality more holistically, as opposed to in piecemeal or according to the narrow agendas that different parts of us might have. And so working through our God images is significant because it can give us greater interior resources to get the big view from the master mode when we're confronted with real life circumstances, right? And so this is not just a spiritual consideration about one's relationship with God, although obviously that is key. It does have practical implications for how we live our lives in the world, right? If we've identified some distorted God images and done work to explore those memories or those physical sensations that we have around those images and our responses to them, and access a certain degree of healing, development, and growth in them, then our internal spiritual resources can be increased, right? So that we are more resilient in our lives of faith, and that translating into the other domains of our life. Understanding that all of the domains of our life are really interrelated and integrated in this system that extends from our innermost self all the way out to all the different social realities that we participate in. And so there's a consideration of God images and why there's benefit to thinking about them, sitting with the way that we imagine God, and beginning to have conversations with ourselves, with others, through scripture, and in many other ways, so that our God images can be more aligned to reality, so that we're operating from a place not of scarcity and fear, but more often acting from a place of sensing goodness and plenitude and opportunity in our life and in our pursuit of our goals. So again, there's a bit more on fear and God images and how that relates to the many parts of the systems that we belong to. I hope that that is some good food for thought. If you have any questions or further ideas about God images that are commonly held, images that you hold, and the way that they can undermine your relationship with God and your other relationships and your activity in the world, please share them. I would really benefit from getting a perspective of where my listeners are at in their relationship with God and how these ideas can help move you forward into a more secure place so that you're more effective, right, in your life and in your relationships. So, as always, thank you for your time and your attention, and God bless.